Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the GP Updates and Hints and Tips session at our MTech Virtual Summit 2022. My name is Tony Soames and I work in business development for Enhance, and I'll be acting as the moderator for today's session. I'm joined by my colleague Sharon Keegan, who is one of our excellent team of GP consultants. Before I hand over to Sharon and we begin the session, I'd like to go over a few simple housekeeping tips. We expect the webinar to last approximately 45 minutes. Please note that the webinar is actually being recorded and will be available to view on demand at a later date. You're all set to listen only and will remain so for the duration of the webinar. And if you have any questions, click the question button on the right-hand side of your screen, and in the new pane that opens, type your question in the top box and click Ask. Do feel free to submit your questions at any point during the webinar, but it's likely, because of the content and how long we're going to take, that we'll probably be able to get back to you after the session completed. With that, I'd like to hand you over to our presenter, Sharon.
Thanks, Tony. Good morning, everybody. You're very welcome. Today, we are going to be looking at Dynamics GP, as you know, because you signed up for this session. So just a small agenda. We can be flexible on time, like we'll get to questions if we can during the session. But first, I'm going to talk to you about GP itself. So some of you may have been using GP for a very long time, and some of you may be new to it. GP has been around almost as long as I have, which is quite a while. It predates Microsoft Windows and was updated for Windows, and you've got a few bits and pieces in there that you can see kind of came over from legacy. It's a very stable system, I have to say, because it's been around so long. It's very stable and widely used, and we are now on GP 18.4. which actually we're on 18.5. It was released last week, but we don't have that in any customers, obviously, as of yet. So I'm going to stick with 18.4. There are some new features coming in there, but I can talk about those if we have time later. I've upgrades in there on my agenda because a lot of the time we talk about upgrades with people, and you know they need to upgrade to get a specific feature. Like recently, we had the emailing changes. Sometimes people, I think that, you know, if they put off upgrading for 4 or 5 years, it's putting off the cost. It kind of isn't, because it takes longer and you still have to do multi-version upgrades and stuff like that. So while it might be a pain to do an upgrade, upgrading frequently means you're minimizing your downtime, really, and the cost is spread out over years rather than putting it all together after 5 years or something like that. With GP, because it is around so long and it is quite stable, most of the things it does is what it does. But users can now make suggestions to Microsoft. So I'm going to share the login with you for that towards the end of the session. So you can log on to a particular website. You can have a look at other people's suggestions. So let's say there's something in the product that's driving you bananas, and you wish it could change, and it's been there for years, and you're, why does this do this? Why can't it do this instead? You can make a suggestion, or if somebody else has made the suggestion already, you can vote on that suggestion. Once something gets enough votes, it will come to Microsoft's attention. You know, a lot of people want this, and they'll review it and decide whether it's suitable to put into the next release. And there are a number of new features that I'm going to be going through, and that came into the product this way. Okay, so anybody can log in there, and you just go in, you can submit, or you can search to see if anybody else is having the same problem as you, and the chances are they are, or anything like that. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the what's new features. So rather than just a tips and tricks, because a lot of the tips and tricks you will have seen before. So what I'm going to do is go through the features in the latest version of GP. So since GP 18, which is Modern Lifecycle, came out, and that came out in, well, like I said, the most recent version came out last week. Before that, we had October 2021, but there's been 5 releases now. Okay, so I'm going to be showing you up to 18.4. But like I said, 18.5 is out as of last week, and if you want more information on that, your account manager can help, or the marketing team, and you can, as you saw on the housekeeping slide, there is an email you can contact us at. After I've gone through the what's new, we're going to look at some of the navigation around GP. As I'm sure any users who've been using it for a while know, there are usually multiple ways to get at a particular thing within GP and to perform a particular process within the system. So we're going to have a look at some of those, and then if we have time, we'll go through some of our tips and tricks, but I'll also show you where you can kind of find more information, because we do have a YouTube channel and our website where you can find videos to previous hints and tips and that kind of thing. So what I'm going to do is I am going to jump into product. So bear with me. This is a live demo and sometimes things go wrong, but hopefully nothing will today. Just to be aware, if I suddenly start talking really quickly and sounding panicky, that could be why. Okay, so one of the first things I'm going to show you for what's new in the GP 18 point whatever 1 to 5 is it's a small thing, but it's one that I know people had issues with, because in a few customer sites I've written a macro to actually do this update, but now in this latest version of GP you can do this yourself. Now it's on the inquiry window. So normally when you go into your inquiry window, it defaults by document number. Okay, so when you open an inquiry window, the default is document number. And like I said, I have a couple of customers where I have written a macro that opens that window. So if a link on their shortcuts, they click on that and it opens the window, but the macro runs really quickly and it changes it to document date, which is the most common way of doing this. But in this version now, you can now save your sort option. So you can actually default it in. So those people with the macros, they can delete them off their shortcuts and free up a bit of room, and there's no danger with the macro going wrong. Okay, so your sort options can now change, and that is one of the ones that came through from the user suggestions, because it was one, obviously people was driving somebody crazy. They put it up, a lot of people voted on it. Microsoft took it on board, made the change. Another one is now in this version, additional fields for analysis in your general ledger transaction. So if I go to my general ledger and have a look in my setup, first of all, down here at the bottom, so you've always had your 4 user-defined fields for your general ledger account code, which I hope you know about and use if you need it. And user-defined fields within GP are fields that you can customize. So let's say you have specific things to your business, most commonly sales and purchases, maybe we see it in. So let's say you have sell a particular product that needs a license. So you need an expiry date and a license number on every one of your customers. You would change the user-defined field from user-defined 1 and user-defined 2 in sales to be license number, expiry date, and then you can run reports based on that. Okay. Well, what they've done now is, so like I said, you have your 4 user-defined already on the setup of your account card, but you now have 2 user-defined labels for your general ledger transactions. And if I go in and have a look at my general ledger journal window, you can now see these 2 additional fields. Because there wasn't a huge amount of room in here for information. You can always use your notes button, obviously, but to have the information on the screen where people can see it very quickly without having to remember to go into the notes, you have your reference field, but you also have these 2 additional fields. So you have that little bit more room for information. And I like that one. And that's one that came via the suggestions. So it is important, if you have suggestions, to be able to, go and make them. Another one then changes they've done is to Smartlist. And I hope you're all familiar with Smartlist and use it. It's an excellent tool. If you haven't been using it or you're not sure about it, we do run online training courses and webinars about different features in GP, and you can sign up for a Smartlist one. It's always very popular, I must say, when we run it, because it is a great way to get information out of the system. Anything that's in the system, you can get it out via a Smartlist. So a couple of the things they've done in the Smartlist, for those of you who are familiar, let's say I go to my list of general ledger accounts. When you add columns now, there's a tick box beside the column. So what that means is, let's say I want to add in a number of columns. Let's go in and add some columns. I'm going to select all and add them all in. And okay, but now I decide, oh, that's way too many columns, so I need to remove like about 20 of those. So in the earlier versions, you would go in and you would click on one and remove. and then click on the next and remove. And it was quite time consuming and annoying. Now you can select multiple ones. So I can go in and tick a number of fields and remove them. Okay, so it's a bulk edit feature. You can also do that with moving them around the place, so moving up, down, that kind of thing. So it's much easier to manage your columns in your smart lists. Another change they have made to Smartlist is in the search options. So when you pick a search field now that has a date, so let me just go find a date in here, create a date. You have always had, these haven't changed, so your is equal to, is between, is not equal to, is greater than, is less than. But under the values now, as well as the enter date and current date, there's been a number of these before, so beginning of week and beginning of month, but they've added in, you know, beginning of quarter, end of quarter, beginning of calendar year, end of calendar year, and so on. You have prior month, next month. So there are far more date options that you actually having to go in and set, say, a month end date every time. So where you have a smart list that you use, let's say at the end of every month as part of your month end process, you would normally go in and say, okay, I'm going to go in and let's say it's a transaction. So where the posting date is between these two dates, and you key in the dates every month. Well, you don't have to do that now. If you should be able to find a variable in here that has that value and changes as the month changes. Okay, so that's a couple of changes on our smart lists. So you're bulk editing columns and you've got more date options. I have to say, I think Smartlist is pretty perfect as it is. Doesn't need a huge amount of changes, but yeah, those two are nice. Another one that seems kind of obvious, but you know, isn't always, when we print a report, usually in the system. So when we print to screen, just print a summary. And again, I hope you're all familiar with report options and printing. But when we print in our earlier versions, before 18.3, I think, the screen always looked like this. And you had to go and maximize it. Now again, that's just one click. But if you're doing lots of these reports, the clicks add up. We don't want you to get repetitive strain injury. So the reports now default to opening maximized. Okay, so you don't have to do that. And again, as you can probably tell, that's another user suggestion. So it opens in a nice kind of easier to read format. You can, of course, and have always been able to, in your destination, do settings in there to maybe if you wanted to go to file, so you can open an Excel and that kind of thing. And again, if you don't know how to do that and you have more questions, drop us a line and we'll have a look. I'm going to discard those changes. Another one I really like, and it's a bit like the user-defined fields on the general ledger transaction. And this is in the purchase ledger. And if you look on your purchase transaction, any second now. There we go. There's now a long description field. Okay, so in most of your settings, you will have, if I turn that off actually, so I'm going to, why you wouldn't want it enabled, I don't know, but you can enable or disable it. So in our earlier versions of GP, the description field was this very small field that you had to, you know, if you're keying in information about an invoice that's come in, it's a payables invoice, not a purchase order processing one with items on, you had to try and get your full description in there. And you'd end up having to use shorthand, and then somebody else has to decipher that shorthand, obviously. Again, as with the general ledger, you can use your notes button to put in more information, but it doesn't have the same, I suppose, impact. So when someone goes to look at that straight away, the main information is here. They may not bother with the note button. And if they don't, and or if you haven't put anything in the note button, you're going to get the email or the call to say, what was that invoice about? Do you have a copy of that invoice? The description isn't very clear. So now, delete that transaction. When we turn on, and like I said, I don't know why you wouldn't turn on, and it doesn't turn on automatically when you upgrade. So any of you who have upgraded recently to GP18, go in here to your payables management setup. So it's in your purchasing desktop and under your setup menu and payables, and tick the enable long description, and it gives you another 100 characters, which is maybe not still enough, but you don't want to write an essay every time, okay? Because of course you can save, with the document attached, you can actually save a copy of the invoice anyway, if people want to see it. But yeah, I like that one. It gives you a lot more room. They haven't added it to sales on the receivable side. I don't know why. Is it not something that's as big a problem on the receivable side? But I guess they may add it in future when they see how popular it is. And again, that's another small thing, but clearly it was driving someone crazy, and you know, they decided to add that in there. Another one for us then is on the financial periods. So if you are the person who sets up the financial periods and opens or closes them every month, when you go into your financial periods on your system menu, the window now opens with a much larger pane down here. So in your old versions, I don't think I can even minimize it. I can't. In the old versions, I think you got about 9 periods in the window. So you couldn't see any additional ones. So if you had 10, 11, 12, maybe 13, you couldn't see them. So now they've maximized it, and you can actually make it bigger as well. And when you drag it down, you'll notice in a lot of the older windows in GP, if you do something like dragging it down or making it bigger, all it does is provide gray space to the side. It doesn't actually do anything for the scrolling window. This is what we call the window in the middle here. So now you can expand the scrolling window for your fiscal periods. And again, sounds like a small change, but it's something that was bothering enough people that they brought it in there. This next one I really like. It's one where you can give out to people. I suppose people can get in trouble, but really, let's call it informational. But yeah, so if you ever looked at a transaction in your general ledger and you're going, who posted that transaction? Like, what is that about? Why, why have they put that in there? Or maybe it's like, who posted that transaction? Good for you, you did the right thing. So when we look now at journal entries in our inquiry, we can see the user who posted. Now, this information was always available in the table, which means we could have pulled it out theoretically in a Smartlist, but now you can see it on screen and it has more impact. So for those of you who are posting, be sure you know what you're posting, because yeah, it's very easy to find out who you are. So yeah, the user who posted, and that is available on every posting that goes to the general ledger. So regardless of where it came from, so if it came from sales, purchases, bank, wherever it came from, the user who posted travels with it from that subledger into our general ledger. Okay, so I like that one. Another one we have that I like is, if I look at, say, like trial balance, and into our summary one again. So let's say, I don't know what T1 is, let's have a look, modify. So let's say you set up, I'm going to go to sales actually, because sales probably gives us more information that we can look at. So if I have a trial balance report or a sales analysis report in here, and let's say I'm going to use my initials again. I've worked on any of your sites, you'll probably maybe find a couple of reports that have SK as the option name, and if they do, you can probably delete those. I probably did them when I was working for you at some point. So let's do this report in detail. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say, okay, so I'm going to do it for a range of something. So let's say a class. I'm going to do it for my these customers in this class, but I also want to look at it for a particular salesperson within that class. This might not give me any information. And maybe for a date. Okay. So and again, the enter dates, they don't have as many in here. I wish they would add the ones from Smartlist, and probably they will. I should maybe go and suggest it. So if I enter the date, and we're in the test company, so the dates, the company, the current year in there is 2027. We're in the future. So if I go 1st to the 1st, 27 to the 31st to the 12th, 27, which is my fiscal year. And my destination, let's make that to the screen. Okay, so I've gone to the trouble of creating this report, and I'm using it quite a bit and so on. So let's save it. But let's say someone comes along and says, well, actually, you've got that report that you do for Aaron J, our salesperson here. Could you maybe do that report for one of the other salespeople? And I go, oh, okay. So instead of having to go in and remember all my settings, what I can do is I can copy the report. Okay, so cancel it. So if I do a new report, so let's call it SK2, very original, and copy. So we'll say, well, which option do you want to copy from? So I'm going to copy from SK. And what I do, it puts in my selections, and the only one I have to change then is the salesperson. So if I do salesperson, so instead of Aaron J, we're going to go with Gary W. Okay, and I save that, and now I have my 2 report options. Okay, so that's a way of copying reports, and you can do that with any report option throughout the system. So that might be something useful for you, because sometimes people go to the trouble of setting up, lots of selections, maybe on age listings. I think are probably the most common ones that I've come across, where let's see, you've got ones done for different currencies and countries and stuff like that, and you want to replicate them. So instead of having to go in and create it each time, you can just copy and make that one small change. And then the last thing I'm going to show you from the what's new is the system password. And those of you who don't administer the system are not going to be the slightest bit interested in this, okay? But for those of you who are, who do, let's say, set up a user. When you set up a new user in the system, you have to go to the user, maybe the user classes, you've got to go to user access, and you've got to go to user security. So there's at least 3 windows you have to go into when you are setting up a new user, for instance. When you open the window, so let's say if I click anywhere on a system menu, it asks me for the system password. Okay, and I enter the system password and the window opens. Now, before GP18 came out, I would go in, do my user, then when I click on user classes or user access, I have to enter the password again. And then I do that bit, and then I go to user security and I have to enter the password again. And let's say you can't copy the password for some reason, maybe there's a setting on your system and it's one of those horrible ones with lots of ampersands and percentage signs and that kind of thing in there. And you have to keep entering it each time. In this latest version, what happens is you only have to enter the system password once per session. And by per session, for a session, I mean, so I've logged in as the SA this morning and I've just opened the user window. So now when I open user access, it doesn't ask me for the password. Okay, so I can go in and do my user access. I can open as many windows as I want. But if I leave GP, so let's say, let me close and go back in, and you'll see what I mean. There's been no changes on the login screen. Password. So let's go back down to my administration menu and go and say, I want to do my user security now. I'm asked for the password. Because this is a new session, I have to put in the password again. I really like that one. As someone who, if I'm working on a customer site, you might be doing users, you might be doing currencies, and so on. So you're doing things with multiple windows. And so I personally like that one. I feel like it's a little gift even just to me, but anybody who's doing the admin on your system is going to appreciate that particular facility. So those are kind of the tips and tricks. There are a couple of new things coming in from Microsoft on 18.5. One of the ones I can think of off the top of my head is that when you open your purchasing transactions, so when you do your payment processing, and this actually is one I could mention, if you're on an older version of GP, when I go in here to this menu, you will have select checks in here. Now it's build payment batch, and that's one that they should have changed a long time ago, really, because most people don't do computer checks from their system now. It's generally EFT or BACS. So when you go in now to create a batch and it's for a payment, so let's actually create a new one in here, for its computer checks. Now, where they didn't change it is they still have computer check in here, so they missed that one. They didn't change it to payments. So when I selected its computer check, you're familiar with it saying is it check, EFT, or credit card. And now in GP18, it defaults in the checkbook ID, whereas previous to this, it did not. When I select EFT, okay, it's not select a process. Okay, let's see what checkbook is. Okay, that's a weird one. That one is usually set up for EFT. Let's try one of the others. Ah, there you go. That's what I meant about a live demo, guys. When you select EFT, normally what happens is the checkbook goes blank, and you get an extra field down here with what format you're using. So are you using your local format? Are you using one for foreign currency? That kind of thing. So I'm sure you're familiar with that. What they've also done now is they've put in an extra tick box in here between check date and checkbook ID, where you can batch your payment. So that instead of sending, let's say there are 20 payments in your EFT batch, instead of sending 20 lines to the bank rec and to the GL, you can now put a tick in there so it sends one line. So depending on how it appears on your bank statement. So if in your bank you send an EFT run and the total is 10,000, that's what you see on your bank statement, then that's what you want to see in your bank rec. So you don't want to have to go in and group them together. So what you do is you will have this tick box now to do that. And that's in 18.5. I can't show you because I don't have it installed, but yeah, that's how you would do it. So that's one of the things. I can't remember the others off the top of my head. Sorry about that. So that's our what's new. Discard that one. So now I'm just going to look at navigation, and this is one I do show quite a bit. If you've been on training courses with me, I apologize because I'm going to show you again. So there are two types of shortcuts really available in here. One is your shortcuts menu here on your left hand side, and the other is your quick links. So if I go in here and take quick links, they're both shortcuts. Okay. Over here on the shortcuts menu, that's really easy to update because let's say I want to go in here and add the creditor card. What I will do in here is I will go to File, Add Shortcuts, and it's over here now on my shortcuts menu. So there. With quick links, you add them yourself. There isn't an option to add quick links. But if you go in here and you click on this little pencil, so you see if I'm out of that pane, I don't get any shortcuts. When I go into the pane, there's my shortcuts. So I go into my little pencil, and I like the quick links because when I go to add a GP window, it actually gives me them in the same order as my menus up here or down here. So if I know that it's a transaction, let's say I want to add the select checks window that you're familiar with, or build payment batch as it is now. So I go to transactions, and I know it's on my purchasing menu, and it's called, in my case now, these are laid out in exactly the same order as the menus. Okay, so I really like that because it's easy to find them. So if I go into build payment batch and say okay, I can modify the name. So let's say I want to call this run EFT, and okay, and say okay. When I refresh the screen, I now have that window in there. So I do like the quick links, and one of the benefits of quick links over shortcuts really is that if you have a new user starting who's going to be working in the same area as you, or let's say you're going on, you've won a load of money in a competition and you're going to take a year off, and someone's coming in to cover for you, you can actually, when you create the new user, or when your admin creates the new user, they can push these shortcuts, these quick links to them. Okay, so you can add the quick links from somebody else, and I think that is really, really useful. So those are shortcuts and quick links. Again, if you want more information on those, I think there's some of our videos on the website probably have links on how to do those. If not, send us a request and we'll do one. The other place that you sort of have shortcuts is a thing called checklists. And this is one that it always surprises me that people don't know about. Under your routines in any of your menus in here, you've got one here called checklists. And again, I like checklists. Let's say there's one set up for month end. These are all shortcuts to GP windows, okay? And you can modify these. You can revert them back to the original. There are ones for different times of the month, times of the year, okay? This one is set to month end. Let's say I want to remove one of those. Let's transfer commissions. The sales guys aren't getting commissions anymore, so I'm going to delete them. Sorry, Dan. Tony, sorry. I get that and Tony confused. Sorry, Tony, you're not getting your commission. I can also add new windows in much the same way as I did with my quick links. Okay. When I do those, when you double click on them, it opens the aging window. But what I really like is it records that I did that. Okay, so it records that I opened that window. It doesn't record that I did anything in that window, unfortunately, but it records that I opened that window. Now, where that is useful is, let's say one of your colleagues maybe is off sick or something like that, and it's month end, and you know that they'd started the month end, but you're not sure whereabouts they were with it. The checklists are not user specific, so I can go in and I can see where they were. Okay, I can say, okay, well, it looks like they've already done the aging, so let's move on to my reconcile to GL. And each of your modules, each menu that I go into, under your routines menu, you have these checklists. And like I said, you can customize them to do anything you want yourself. So that's another type of shortcut that I do really, really like. Next one is navigation lists. And again, this is one not many people use. So everybody uses Smartlist, or a lot of people use Smartlist, which is really, really good. But navigation lists they're sort of like Smartlist, but an interactive one. Okay. So if you notice on my left-hand side here, this is my shortcuts menu. Okay. When I click into one of my modules here, so let's say I'm going to go down to sales. Those shortcuts are gone now. So what are these things that are here in their place? These are your navigation lists. So let's say I go and I have a look at debtors. This is sort of like a Smartlist. It gives me a list of debtors. I can add filters, I can add columns, all the same kind of things I do in Smartlist. But one of the things I can do that I can't do in Smartlist is I can action things from here. So let's say you saw when I ticked Aaron Fitz Electrical there, I got these menu options up across the top here. So, you know, I can go and apply my sales documents from here. I could run an aging, so I could select multiple ones. You can see that when I select multiple ones, some of the shortcuts disappear. But you have ones like aging, finance charges, printing statements, applying holds, all that kind of thing. And again, you have that in each of your menus. You have it for financial sales, purchasing, inventory. You have it for all of them. So you can process things within your navigation lists. Okay. And I do know one or two customers who use it almost exclusively. They log in the morning, and if for someone who works in the sales, they just go straight to the navigation list and they do everything from in here. They don't bother with the menus. Okay. So just to make you aware kind of the navigation lists and what's in there. And each of the different types of things you can do are in there. So this is a list of debtors and things that I can do with my debtors. Let's say I go down to my receivables transactions. So when I go to my receivables transactions, and again, it's the same kind of thing. I can add a filter, I can add columns, you can modify, you can create new versions of them. Okay, so in the same way as you can with Smartlists. But you can now do, let's say this is a sales invoice. So let's say I want these 3 sales invoices and I'm going to send them an email. So it's a really, really good way of doing kind of grouped transactions, or if you want to do, you know, if you want to do things for 10 different customers, you want to make changes to 10 different customers, you want to inactivate them or something like that. You can do this rather than having to go into 10 different cards from the cards menu and tick the inactive button. So you can do it all from in here. And I really, really like that. And it's been around for donkey's years. It's been around for quite a long time. But like I said, very few people use it. So that might be something you could have a play with if you have a test company. When you get back to work, go into the test company and have a look at the navigation lists and see if they're the kind of things you can use. And if you need more information, you know, I think they're covered in the help menu. So I hope you all know that when you're in a menu in GP, when you hit the F1 key, it opens a help menu about the item you're in. So yeah, so here's my list view window. So this gives me information. So let's see, creating a list view. And it will talk you through how to do the various things. We can go back. And for anyone who doesn't know, any window you're in GP, you hit F1 and it will give you information about that window. The list one doesn't have a huge amount of options on it because there's too many buttons, I suppose, that would need. But let's say I go into I come back up. To get back to your menu, by the way, up at the very top, you have your menus. Okay, so you'll have sales at the top of this one, purchasing at the top of the purchases, and so on. But yeah, when back in receivables transactions. sorry. Yeah, so when you're in any given window, sorry, faffing about now. Let's say I go into the customer window, the debtor window. When I hit the F1 key in here, it says these are the things that are related to this window. Okay. It also says here are the fields in this window, and they're listed alphabetically, which is helpful. And here are the buttons, again, listed alphabetically. So all the information you need about a window should be available there at your fingertips from your help menu. So the F1 key, or if you go to help on the window and about this item, okay? So you go help about this window, okay? So it gives you links. So let's see, adding a customer card, it steps you through it. So it's like a little training manual. And like I said, it's really, really good. I mean, there's so many windows in GP, and when you think that each one has its own menu, it's help menu, it's really, really good. Okay, so those are my navigation kind of tips. I see we've only 8 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to go through kind of tips and tricks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to here on my, okay, on my agenda. So I'm just going to give you this information. So the user suggestions, you're getting a copy of these slides. So your user suggestions, you go to this website, to this link. At the bottom of the page, it's got Dynamics GP. There's a button here I've highlighted in yellow, and you can see there's 897 suggestions in there. You can go in and have a search through those. There's a search function to see if your suggestion has already, your issue has already been suggested or resolved, and you can vote. Or at the top of the page, you can click on suggest a new idea, and that will bring you into a window where you can put up your idea and submit it. Okay. The other one is for more what's new information. Okay, this website has the what's new for every version of GP back to GP 2015. Okay, so that's, you know, a good bit. That's 7 years worth. So if there's anything you want to kind of find out that you're not sure does it do or not, you could go there and have a search. And then last but not least, these websites, so this is our website, and you can search for GP under the resources section, and here's our YouTube channel. And one word of warning about the YouTube channel, and please take pity on a lowly consultant who volunteered to do videos for Christmas without really thinking it through. Yeah, we've got the 10 days of Hintmas and 12 days of Hintmas on the YouTube channel there, and that does have 12 different hints, or, you know, sections. I think they're 5-10 minute videos about different areas of GP where you can see kind of more about it. I'm going to see, are there any questions? Because we've kind of come to the end of what I was going to show. I don't know if
no, I can't see any.
There's no questions. Does anyone have any questions that you want to submit now? No? Okay, I will leave it at that then, and I will hand back to Tony. Thank you, Tony.
That's great. Thanks, Sharon. Excellent as usual. So that concludes today's session. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. If you do have any questions, sometimes people are a bit loath to put them into the box in the session. Please feel free. Obviously, you've got contact details of your account manager. Drop them to them, or just obviously just contact us, and we'll answer them accordingly. Please keep a look out in your inboxes over the next few days, where we'll actually send you a link to today's recording, so you don't have to remember everything you've seen. And once the webinar is actually closed, the dreaded short survey will pop up, and we know that everybody hates filling in surveys. It's a really short, literally 5 or 6 questions. If you could take a chance to complete it, it does help us, as David said earlier on the CEO session, to shape what happens next in terms of the next sessions, which is really important for us as a business to make sure that we're hitting the mark with you for clients. The sessions that will take place after this session throughout the day are going to be displayed on the screen, so you can see that the next one coming up, an introduction to Dynamics Business Central at 11 o'clock. Please sign up and attend any sessions that may be of interest to you. And once again, thank you for joining us at the MTech Summit 2022. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.